Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today at your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio, no pictures live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the issue of clean, current, up-to-date voter registration rolls in the United States. Now, we've got a presidential election nearly weeks away, and you'd think that all minds would be focused throughout the entire United States on making sure that the voter rolls were squeaky clean and absolutely up to date, and all voters were legitimate, and so on. In fact, that's not the case. Now, there's a story that I thought should have been an international headline story, but in one of the rural states of the US, where I think there's about 4 million voters in total, or an alleged 4 million voters, they hired the state government, their Republican government. They hired a state, like an auditor, someone to go through and do as I understand, at least a forensic style audit of all the voters on the rolls, which is quite a major task, by the way. But now this is in a state with 4 million or so voters, and it's going to be a huge task in a state with many more times that on the voter rolls. Nonetheless, so they went through about 4 million. They came up with just over 750,000. Wait for this, 750,000. That's I think it was 19%, 18% of all voters were illegitimate. They were either dead or they'd moved and gone into state. Some of them long dead, like they've been dead 10 years plus, and they've moved into state, or they were illegal aliens that somehow managed to get an interstate, say a driver's license in California, where they hand those things out, and then were able to move into this state and were just able to transfer their license across, in effect, without a citizenship check. So anyway, and they'd gone through the rolls. It was over 750,000. So this brings the electoral roll down to 3.22 million from 4 million. Now, this is a hangover from the last presidential election, or for that matter, the state election. Now, how did those people vote last time? All those non-existent people, the dead people, and so on. So, this is a matter of huge concern. You think any electoral commission, any government, state, whatever level, state, federal, you think that their minds would be aggressively focused on cleaning up the electoral rolls, because your primary job as an election commissioner is to uphold the integrity of the electoral process and the election itself. And central to that, of course, is making sure that anyone, all votes are for real living people residing in the state, and so on. So this is a big deal. And if you look at that amount of votes, if you multiply this out across the presidential election, that's say the average number of people that do cast votes in a presidential election, then you're looking at something in the order of 20 to 25 million voters are illegitimate. They either don't exist, or they're dead, or again they've moved, or whatever the case may be. So this is a really big deal. This could wildly swing an election one way or another if this was used nefariously. And one of the things that sort of intrigued me about the 2020 election, which in my opinion was so obviously rigged that you don't even need to talk about it, one of the things was how much energy just pretty much every government official at every level was determined to not have a forensic audit of what went on. Now, given the amount of postal ballots where signature matching did not take place, the amount of postal ballots that had no folds in the paper, and if you're posting it out, the paper's folded, it gets posted back. So there was over 1 million votes that in key battleground states where there was no folding of the paper. And where you look at the broken chain of custody, where votes were moved from one place to another without an issue like somebody delivering the votes and somebody receiving the votes. That's all meant to be signed off and witnessed. And you had over 10 million votes where there was a broken chain of custody there. and that wasn't investigated. So all of these anomalies, including dead people on the voter rolls, including the amount of voters voting from addresses that didn't exist, and all this sort of thing, under bridges, and so 10,000 voters registered at one address. None of this stuff, none of that was audited. So we need to I think, come to the realization that there is vast rubber and wiggle room within the whole voting process for nefarious actors to rig the outcomes, which in my view they clearly did in that last presidential election. But this fairly small, semi-rural state, again, only 4 million voters, and over 750,000 of those voters were either didn't exist or had no longer lived. Wow. I mean, this is a huge number. You'd think that the amount of dead people, I think, would be 1 or 2%, 3%, this sort of thing, which even that is concerning. But because you're in a tight election, 1 or 2% of the vote either way can decide it. But when it's getting off at 20%, I mean, that's or even 20%, that's insane. That there's that many illegitimate votes still on the voter rolls. So every state should be, in my view at least, focused very much on tidying up and cleaning up and making sure it's 100% squeaky clean, legitimate, and reliable and dependable, so that the people can have absolute confidence in the electoral system. And that it took so long in this particular state, I think it was North Dakota, this particular state, to do this is in itself a savage indictment of the management of and the oversight of the electoral process. You've been in Tacitus today, your pushback challenge. Thank you for listening.